Dose determine concentration, or concentration can determine dose, and what do you say? Well, that's not even possible. There's an infinite number of possibilities. And then he continued to work backwards from these possibilities to tell you what happened at the scene and demonstrate it for you, like he was a cop, because that's what he was hired to do. Because they wanted a drip, and none existed. This is the only thing Dr. Schaefer ever has done that actually relates to the facts of this case. Because this is what Dr. Murray did. Over 3 to 5 minutes, provided 25 milligrams of propofol. This is what Dr. Murray did. We had to ask him to do this, and he did this. And you can see that based on what Dr. Murray did, there is no danger to Michael Jackson. There is no harm to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson cannot die from what Dr. Murray did, and Dr. Schaefer even admitted that. Now, why would Dr. Schaefer present this 25 milligram simulation to you and not this? Is he a scientist? Is he an advocate? You recall, this is the 10 lorazepam simulation that Dr. Schaefer showed you. You remember that? 10 shots, 4 milligrams each. I asked him. The only reason that he even came up with this simulation, the only reason, is because there was an empty vial of lorazepam at the scene in one of the bags. That's the only reason. But in order to get this concentration at 12, this is what he came up with. Working backwards, he decided 10 shots every 30 minutes to get to where he needed to be. As ridiculous as that is, I asked him, what about this line here that I had to draw in? What about that line there where you, in your report, where it said not responsive to painful stimulus? Where's that line? Why is it out of your diagram that you showed to the jury? And his response, that he didn't think the jury could understand it. It's just too complicated. That one line. I'll tell you why he didn't want you to see it. Because this isn't an analgesic. This is a sedative. And after these many shots, 4 shots, this particular individual is so knocked out from lorazepam, he can't even feel painful stimulus. So it would require Dr. Murray to give 4 more shots, 5 more shots, when this particular individual is comatose. And he didn't want anyone to know that. And then I asked him, well, what about here, this midnight, this first shot he gets? He's at the Staples Center. Oh, he is? And what about the second one? He's not even home yet. He's in a car. Oh, he is? And the next day he comes back and he brings a 9-shot, moves it over, 9-shot, 4 milligram, which just proves my point. If you're an advocate, you can come up with anything you want to prove the case that you're hired to prove. And that's exactly what he did. Prosecution desperately needed a drip. Not because they couldn't prove that Dr. Murray made mistakes, not because they couldn't prove that Dr. Murray was did the things that other doctors wouldn't. They needed a drip because they can't prove a crime. And they really need to prove a crime. I asked Dr. Schaefer. We had this whole oral lorazepam issue. I asked him about free lorazepam in the stomach. Would that show that Michael Jackson swallowed lorazepam? Yes. But what did the prosecution tell you over and over again? Well, it's just 1/26 of a pill. It's just 1/300th of a pill. As if you wouldn't understand that pills dissolve. And the medicine in those pills eventually go into the bloodstream. But if there's any free lorazepam in the stomach, there's one thing you know is that Michael Jackson swallowed lorazepam. And why would Dr. Murray, who's already given 2 milligrams of lorazepam on 2 different occasions, give him pills? Because that was the response when Dr. Schaefer came back on rebuttal. Well, we don't know whether or not Dr. Murray gave this pill, right? What did he say? Right. Same metabolic pathway. But during his testimony, he never mentioned. And I'm sorry for this. This is I don't realize I did a bad job on this. But this is an exhibit. This is just math. You could keep going. 125. Down to 0.75, something like that. But you keep going every 22 minutes. So finally, you can get down to 0.08, 0.008. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't take very long for that to happen because it's essentially exponential. The difference between 16 milligrams and 32 milligrams at one point is 22 minutes. But what we do know is that Michael Jackson swallowed lorazepam. And despite all of that, did you see one single oral lorazepam simulation from Dr. Schaefer? Of course you didn't. Because that's not going to help the prosecution. And Dr. Schaefer is an advocate. We provided you that. We did. And by the way, when Dr. Schaefer came back in rebuttal, he didn't say a word about this. He didn't say anything about whether this was right or wrong. Not a word. You take a look at this. This is Dr. Schaefer's graph, which shows how he gets to 12 o'clock. This is exactly the same ending place with swallowing lorazepam. Now, we're not telling you, and Dr. Watt didn't tell you that this is what happened, because he never told you what happened, because he's a scientist. He's not a cop. But he tried to explain to you why you can get to the exact same place with oral lorazepam, not just injectable lorazepam. But Dr. Schaefer didn't bother because it didn't fit. You were provided 2 scenarios in this case. And you were, by the way, you were given a charge in this case about 2 reasonable scenarios involving circumstantial evidence. And I encourage you to read it, because what it tells you is if there are 2 reasonable scenarios, you have to choose the one that points towards acquittal. But you have 2 reasonable scenarios about lorazepam. And the first one is that Dr. Murray gave 10 4-milligram doses to an already comatose Michael Jackson. Or Michael Jackson went into his personal bathroom and swallowed lorazepam.